I, 28F, stood beside my new husband, Liam, 29M, our hands clasped together so tightly my knuckles were white. The reception hall was filled with the warm chatter of our friends and family. The scent of roses and buttercream frosting hung in the air. Everything was perfect, exactly as we had planned for over a year. We had just finished our first dance, and the DJ announced it was time to cut the cake. It was our moment, a sweet, symbolic start to our shared life. But then, a sharp feedback squeal cut through the music. My mother-in-law, Brenda, was at the microphone, a triumphant smile plastered on her face. "Before they cut the cake," she announced, her voice booming through the speakers, "I have an important announcement to make." A cold dread washed over me. I went pale. Liam squeezed my hand, a silent question in his touch. I had no answer for him. I just stared at his mother, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. This was not part of the schedule. We had a schedule. A very detailed, minute-by-minute schedule that Brenda herself had insisted on reviewing. This was a rogue action. A hijacking. I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that whatever came next was not for our benefit. It was for hers. Her eyes scanned the crowd, deliberately building the suspense. She was a performer, and this was her stage. Our stage. "As you all know," she continued, her voice dripping with manufactured emotion, "family is the most important thing in the world. And our family is about to get a little bigger." A murmur went through the room. I could feel dozens of eyes shifting from Brenda to me. They thought she was talking about me. They thought this was some clumsy, pre-planned reveal of a pregnancy. My stomach twisted into a knot. We weren't pregnant. We had just gotten married. We wanted to travel first, to enjoy being just the two of us. This was a nightmare. I saw Liam's sister, Chloe, and her husband, Mark, sitting at a table near the front. Chloe looked just as confused as I felt, while Mark seemed to be studying the tablecloth with intense focus. "My sweet daughter, Chloe," Brenda declared, pointing a dramatic finger towards her, "is going to make me a grandmother." The room erupted in applause and cheers. People turned to beam at Chloe, who was now bright red, a deer caught in the headlights. Mark was patting her back, a forced smile on his lips. The spotlight. Our spotlight had been completely stolen and moved on to them. It was no longer our wedding reception. It was Chloe's pregnancy announcement party, hosted by Brenda. Liam let go of my hand and started clapping, a wide, genuine smile on his face. He turned to me, expecting me to share his joy. I couldn't. All I could feel was the icy sting of betrayal. She had done this on purpose. She had waited for our biggest moment, the one that was supposed to be uniquely ours, and she had made it about herself and her other child. I felt frozen in place. The DJ, trying to recover, started playing an upbeat song. People were getting up to congratulate Chloe and Mark. Liam leaned in close to me, his breath warm against my ear. "Isn't that amazing news?" he whispered excitedly. I could not find my voice. I just nodded, a jerky, robotic motion. He didn't seem to notice my distress. He was just happy for his sister, swept up in the moment his mother had created. That was the problem. He saw a happy announcement. I saw a calculated act of sabotage. The cake cutting felt like a blur. We smiled for the cameras, our hands wrapped around the knife together, but the sweetness of the moment was gone. All I could think about was Brenda's smiling face as she watched us, basking in the glory of her grand reveal. She had made herself the center of attention, the grand matriarch bestowing news upon her subjects. She had taken our day and rewritten the script to give herself the starring role. And as I looked at my new husband, so blissfully unaware of the malice behind the act, I realized this was not just about a stolen moment. This was about the future. This was a declaration of her power in our new family. And I was not going to let her win. The ride home from the reception was quiet. Liam was still buzzing with excitement, humming along to the radio. I stared out the window, watching the city lights streak by. the beautiful white dress I wore feeling like a costume from a play that had gone terribly wrong. The silence between us grew heavier with each passing mile. He finally seemed to notice something was wrong. He reached over and turned the radio down. "You've been quiet," he said, his voice soft. "Are you tired?" "No," I said, my own voice sounding flat and distant even to my own ears. "I'm not tired." He waited for me to say more. When I didn't, he pressed. "Then what is it? Did everything go okay after the announcement?" I got so caught up with Chloe and Mark. That was the problem right there. "Everything went fine," I said, choosing my words carefully. "Your mother certainly knows how to command a room." He chuckled, missing the sharp edge in my tone. "Yeah, that's Mom. Always has to be the center of attention. But the news was great, right?" "I'm going to be an uncle." "The news was wonderful," I agreed. "The timing was not." He finally seemed to understand. He sighed, a sound of weary resignation that I was already starting to dread. "Ava, don't do this." She was just excited. She probably didn't even think about it. "She thought about it," I said, turning to look at him. She stood up there and said, "Before they cut the cake." She knew exactly what she was doing, Liam. She was taking our moment and making it hers. "You're overreacting," he said, his voice shifting from gentle to defensive. "It was a happy family moment. It's our wedding. It's all part of the same celebration." "No, it's not," I insisted, my voice rising. "It was our wedding reception, celebrating our marriage. She made it about Chloe. She couldn't let us have one day that was just about us." "That's not fair," he shot back. "She loves you. She was just happy and wanted to share the news with everyone." "You're making it sound like she's some kind of evil villain." I felt a surge of frustration. He wasn't getting it. He wasn't even trying to see it from my perspective. This was his normal. Brenda's grandstanding, her scene stealing, it was all just Mom being Mom. But it wasn't normal to me, and I couldn't accept it as our future. I looked down at my hands, at the new simple gold band that sat beside my engagement ring. It was supposed to be a symbol of our partnership. Right now, I felt completely alone. "I don't want to fight about this tonight," I said, my voice dropping to a whisper. "I'm just disappointed. That's all." He reached over and took my hand. "I'm sorry," he said. "I know it wasn't ideal timing, but let's not let it ruin our night. We're married now, that's all that matters." I let him hold my hand, but I didn't feel any comfort from it. He thought this was a small bump in the road, a minor social faux pas. I knew it was a warning shot. Brenda had shown me exactly how she operated. She would smile to your face while she took what was yours. And my husband, her son, would make excuses for her every step of the way. As we pulled into our driveway, I made a silent promise to myself. I would not let this go. I would not let her bulldoze our lives. This was the beginning of a war, and she had just fired the first shot. We spent the next week in a strange honeymoon haze. We went through the motions, opening gifts, writing thank you cards, and settling into our new life. The wedding gifts were generous, and a significant portion was cash and checks. We had a joint savings account specifically for it, earmarked for a down payment on a house. It was our dream, the one tangible goal that had kept us going through all the stress of wedding planning. Every time we deposited a check, we felt a little closer to that goal. Liam seemed to have forgotten the incident with his mother completely. He was happy, relaxed, and utterly convinced that our married life was off to a perfect start. I tried to be too. I really did. I tried to push down the resentment that simmered just below the surface. I told myself he was right, that maybe I was overreacting. But every time I saw Brenda's handwriting on a gift card, a little jolt of anger went through me. About 2 weeks after the wedding, I sat down at our small kitchen table to update our budget spreadsheet. It was something I did every couple of weeks, a habit that gave me a sense of control and order. I logged into our joint savings account, the one holding all the wedding money. I expected to see a balance of just over $30,000. Instead, the number that stared back at me was 25,000. My blood ran cold. $5,000 was just gone. I refreshed the page, thinking it was a glitch. The number stayed the same. I clicked on the transaction history, my heart hammering in my chest. There it was. A single, large withdrawal. An online transfer for exactly $5,000 made 3 days ago. The description was vague, just a string of numbers. I didn't recognize it. I immediately called Liam at work. "Hey," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Do you know anything about a $5,000 transfer out of our wedding account?" There was a pause on the other end. "What?" "No," he said. "I haven't touched that account. Are you sure?" "I'm looking at it right now, Liam," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "It was transferred out 3 days ago. Did you buy something? Stocks? Or maybe you moved it to a different account?" I was grasping at straws, looking for any logical explanation that didn't involve theft. "No, Ava, I swear I didn't," he said, and he sounded genuinely confused. "That's our house fund. I wouldn't move a penny without talking to you. Maybe it's a bank error. You should call them." A bank error. That felt plausible. Relieved, I hung up and immediately called the bank. I spent 20 minutes on hold, tapping my fingers nervously on the table. Finally, a customer service representative came on the line. I explained the situation, giving him the transaction details. He put me on hold again to investigate. The minutes crawled by. "Ma'am," he said when he came back on the line. "I've looked into the transfer. It was initiated online using the correct login credentials and password. It was a standard transfer to another account." "Can you tell me where it went?" I asked, my hope starting to fade. "I'm sorry, due to privacy policies, I can't disclose the details of the receiving account," he said in a practiced, unhelpful tone. "But I can confirm that from our end, it looks like a legitimate transaction. It wasn't flagged as fraudulent." My stomach dropped. It wasn't a mistake. Someone had logged into our account and taken our money. And there were only 2 people who had the password. Me and Liam. And I knew it wasn't me. The only other possibility was that someone had guessed our password, but it was complex. A random string of letters and numbers. It was highly unlikely. When Liam got home that evening, I had the laptop open on the table, the bank statement displayed on the screen. He looked at it, his face pale. "You called the bank?" he asked. "I did," I said, my voice tight. "They said it was a legitimate transfer. Someone used our password, Liam." He ran a hand through his hair, pacing back and forth in our small kitchen. "This doesn't make any sense. Who would do that? Who even has our password?" And then, a thought struck me. A horrible, sinking thought that made me feel sick. There was one other person. One other person who might have had access. I remembered months ago when we were setting up the account, Brenda had been there. She was helping us with the wedding planning, which mostly meant criticizing our choices and insisting on her own. We were on her computer, and she had helped us navigate the bank's website. I remembered Liam typing in the password. Had she been looking over his shoulder? "Liam," I said slowly, dreading the answer. "When we set up that account, we were at your mom's house, right? On her computer?" He stopped pacing and looked at me, a flicker of understanding in his eyes. "Yeah," he said. "I think so. Why?" "Did she see you type in the password?" I asked. He frowned, thinking back. "I don't know. Maybe? I wasn't paying attention. But she wouldn't— Ava, she wouldn't do that. That's a crazy accusation." "Is it?" I shot back, the anger I'd been suppressing finally bubbling to the surface. "Is it crazier than hijacking our wedding to announce Chloe's pregnancy? Is it crazier than needing to be the center of every single moment? $5,000 is missing, Liam. And the only person I can think of who had the opportunity and the motive to take it is your mother." Motive? He scoffed, his voice laced with disbelief. What possible motive would she have to steal from us? I don't know, I said, throwing my hands up in the air. Maybe she needed it for something. Maybe she thinks we owe her for the wedding. Maybe she just feels entitled to our money, the same way she felt entitled to our moment. You're being paranoid, he said, shaking his head. You've had it out for her since the wedding, and now you're looking for things to blame on her. There has to be another explanation. Maybe our account was hacked. We should file a police report. He was shutting me down again. Defending her, just like he did in the car on our wedding night. He refused to even consider the possibility that his mother was capable of something so deceitful. It was easier for him to believe in a phantom hacker than to confront the truth about his own family. Fine, I said, my voice cold and hard. Let's file a police report. But I'm going to find out where that money went, Liam, with or without your help. He looked at me, his expression a mixture of hurt and frustration. It's not about helping, Ava. It's about not jumping to insane conclusions about my own mother. The conclusion isn't insane, I said quietly, looking him straight in the eye. What's insane is that $5,000 of our future is gone. And you're more worried about defending the person who most likely took it than you are about getting it back. The conversation ended there. An angry, unresolved silence filled our home. That night, we slept on opposite sides of the bed, a chasm of mistrust between us. I lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling. The joy of our new marriage had been replaced by a gnawing suspicion. This wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about trust. It was about whether my husband would ever be on my team, or if he would always be on hers. And I knew, with a heavy heart, that I was on my own in this. I had to prove it. I had to find the truth, no matter how ugly it was. The next morning, I decided to take a different approach. A direct confrontation with Liam had failed. He was too deep in denial. I needed evidence, something concrete that he couldn't explain away. Accusing Brenda directly without proof would be even worse. She would deny it, paint me as a hysterical, ungrateful daughter-in-law, and Liam would believe her. I needed to be smart about this. I needed to investigate. My first step was to try and trace the transfer. The bank had been a dead end, but I thought about other ways. The transaction had a reference number. I started by Googling it, hoping it might be linked to a specific payment processor or company. It was a long shot, but I had to start somewhere. The search results were a jumble of technical jargon and unrelated forum posts. It was useless. I decided my next step should be to talk to someone in the family. Not to accuse, but to fish for information. Chloe was the obvious choice. She was closer to Brenda than anyone. Maybe she would know if her mother was having financial troubles or if she had made any large, unexplained purchases recently. I called her, my hands clammy. I tried to sound casual. Hey, Chloe, I said, forcing a cheerful tone. How are you feeling? Any morning sickness yet? Oh, a little, she said, and she did sound tired. But mostly I'm just excited. It's all happening so fast. We chatted for a few minutes about the pregnancy, about her doctor's appointments. I let her lead the conversation, waiting for the right moment to gently steer it in the direction I needed. Finally, I saw an opening. Speaking of things happening fast, I said, Liam and I are trying to get our finances organized for a house down payment. It's so overwhelming. Oh, I know, she sighed. Mark and I are in the same boat. With the baby coming, we really need a bigger place, but everything is so expensive. Tell me about it, I said. Brenda has been giving us so much advice. She's so good with money. I felt a pang of guilt for the lie, but it was a necessary one. I was baiting the hook. Chloe was quiet for a moment. Yeah, she said, her voice hesitant. Mom, she likes to be involved in things like that. The way she said it, with a slight, almost imperceptible strain, told me everything I needed to know. There was something there. She helped us set up our savings account, actually. I continued, pushing a little further. She's always so generous with her time. Another pause. She is, Chloe said. the words sounding hollow. Listen, Ava, I have to run. My next appointment is in a few minutes. But let's get lunch soon, okay? Of course, I said. Talk to you later. I hung up the phone, my mind racing. Chloe's hesitation was telling. She was hiding something. She knew something about her mother's financial situation that she wasn't comfortable sharing. It wasn't proof, but it was a strong sign that I was on the right track. Brenda had money problems, and she was hiding them from her family. My next move felt more drastic, more invasive, but I was feeling desperate. I decided to try and access Brenda's social media. Not her public profile, but to see if I could get into her private messages. It felt wrong, but the theft of $5,000 felt a lot more wrong. I knew from Liam that Brenda used the same password for everything. She once joked about it, saying it was the only way she could remember it. The password was the name of her childhood dog, followed by her birth year. It was ridiculously insecure. I went to her Facebook page and clicked Forgot Password. But then I stopped. That would send a notification to her email. She would know someone was trying to get in. I needed another way. I thought back to the day we set up the bank account on her computer. She used a web browser I wasn't familiar with, but most of them offered to save passwords. It was a long shot, but what if her computer had saved our banking password? And if it saved ours, it probably saved hers for other sites. The idea was audacious. I would have to go to her house. I would need an excuse to use her computer. My mind started working, formulating a plan. I could say I needed to print some documents for a job application and that my printer was broken. It was a plausible lie. Brenda loved to feel needed and helpful. She would jump at the chance to assist me. I called her that afternoon. "Hi, Brenda," I said, my voice sweet as sugar. "I have a huge favor to ask. My printer just died, and I have to print out a resume for a job opening that closes this evening. Is there any chance I could pop over and use your computer for a few minutes?" "Of course. Dear," she chirped, exactly as I had predicted. "You come right over. I'll put the kettle on." I felt a knot of anxiety in my stomach as I drove to her house. This was a huge risk. If she caught me, it would be a disaster. I would be the villain she always wanted me to be. But the image of that missing $5,000 spurred me on. It was our future she had stolen. I had to do this. When I arrived, Brenda greeted me with a warm hug, one that felt completely fake. She led me to the small office where her old desktop computer sat. "Here you go, dear," she said. "Take all the time you need. I'll be in the kitchen with the tea." My heart was pounding as I sat down in front of the screen. I opened the browser and went to the bank's website. A small pop-up appeared near the login field. "Manage passwords." My breath hitched. I clicked on it. A list of websites appeared, each with a username and a series of black dots representing the password. I scrolled down the list. Facebook, email. And there it was, our bank, with our username. I clicked the small eye icon to reveal the password. It was ours. It had been saved on her computer this whole time. This was it. This was the inconsistency, the crack in her facade. She had access. She had the means. Now I just needed to find the motive. I quickly printed a blank document to maintain my cover story, then closed the password manager. I felt a surge of adrenaline. I was closer now. I was so much closer to the truth. I grabbed the piece of paper from the printer and went to the kitchen, a triumphant smile on my face that I hoped looked like simple gratitude. "All done," I said, holding up the blank page. "You're a lifesaver, Brenda." "Anytime, dear," she said, handing me a cup of tea. "Anything for my family." I sipped the tea, the bitter taste a perfect match for the feeling in my gut. Family. She had a strange way of showing it. As I drove home, I felt a new sense of resolve. I had proven she had the opportunity. Now I just had to find out why she did it. The conversation with Chloe had given me a clue. Money troubles. The next phase of my investigation would be to figure out just how deep those troubles ran. The mystery was deepening, and I was determined to solve it. The confirmation that Brenda had our password saved on her computer shifted something inside me. The nagging doubt, the small voice that whispered I might be paranoid, was silenced. Now it was a mission. I spent the next few days observing, gathering small pieces of a puzzle I didn't yet understand. I started paying closer attention to Brenda's behavior, her words, her habits. Liam and I went over for the obligatory Sunday dinner. I watched her like a hawk. She was wearing a new silk blouse that looked expensive. She talked about a weekend spa trip she had taken with some friends. On the surface, everything seemed normal, prosperous even. But there were small cracks if you looked closely. When Liam's father, Robert, asked her about a credit card bill, her cheerful demeanor vanished for a split second. "It's handled, Robert," she said, her voice sharp and dismissive, before immediately changing the subject to Chloe's pregnancy. It was a masterful deflection. She used the baby as a shield, a happy topic to distract from anything uncomfortable. I saw Robert sigh and drop the subject, a familiar weariness in his eyes. It was clear this was a pattern. Later, while helping Brenda clear the table, I tried a gentle probe. "That's a beautiful blouse, Brenda," I said. "You have such great taste." "Oh, this old thing?" she said with a dismissive wave of her hand. "I got it on sale. An absolute steal." It was a classic non-answer. I decided to push a little more, feigning naivety. "You should show me where you find such great deals. Liam and I are on a tight budget saving for the house, especially now." I let the end of the sentence hang in the air, a subtle hint about our financial situation. Her smile tightened. "Of course, dear. We'll have to go shopping one day." She quickly turned and walked into the kitchen, ending the conversation. She was stonewalling me, but her discomfort was obvious. She didn't like talking about money, at least not in any real detail. She only liked to talk about the things money could buy. My next step was to dig deeper into that transaction reference number. My initial Google search had been a bust, but I had an idea. I had a friend, Sarah, who worked in the fraud department of a different bank. She understood the intricacies of online payment systems. I knew she couldn't look up the specific transaction, but maybe she could recognize the format of the reference number and tell me what kind of service it might be associated with. I met Sarah for coffee, my nerves on edge. I was careful how I framed the situation. I didn't want to admit my mother-in-law was a thief. "We had a weird transaction on our account," I explained, showing her a picture of the statement on my phone. "The bank says it's legitimate, but we don't recognize it. We think we might have been hacked. Does this reference number look familiar to you at all?" Sarah squinted at the phone. She said, her brow furrowed. "It's not a standard bank-to-bank transfer code. This format, it looks more like a third-party payment processor. A lot of online merchants use these, especially for things like subscription services or online gaming." My heart skipped a beat. "Online gaming?" I asked, trying to keep my voice even. "Yeah," she said, nodding. "Like online casinos, poker sites, that kind of thing. They use these processors to handle deposits and withdrawals. It's a way to keep the casino's name from appearing directly on a bank statement. People who have, a bit of a habit, prefer it that way. It's more discreet." Discreet? The word hung in the air between us. A $5,000 transfer to an online casino. It was starting to make a horrible kind of sense. The new clothes, the spa trips, they weren't signs of wealth. They were signs of someone trying desperately to project an image of wealth, perhaps to cover up significant losses. Brenda didn't just have money troubles. It was possible she had a gambling problem. The thought was shocking, but it fit the pieces together. The secrecy, the defensiveness around money, Chloe's hesitation. It would explain why she needed a large sum of cash quickly and quietly. It would explain why she would be desperate enough to steal from her own son. It was a darker, more destructive secret than I had ever imagined. I went home that day with a heavy weight in my chest. This was no longer just about a stolen moment at our wedding or a stolen sum of money. This was about a serious addiction, a secret that was clearly tearing their family apart from the inside. Robert's weary sigh, Chloe's strained voice. They weren't just dealing with a difficult woman. They were enabling an addict. That night, I tried to talk to Liam again. I approached it cautiously, armed with this new, terrible theory. We were sitting on the couch, the television playing softly in the background. Liam, I began, my voice quiet. I found out something about that transfer. He muted the TV, his full attention on me. What is it? I had a friend who works at a bank look at the reference number, I said. She said it's from a payment processor that's commonly used for online casinos. Liam stared at me, his face blank. Online casinos? What are you talking about? I think your mom has a gambling problem, I said, the words feeling heavy and ugly as they came out of my mouth. I think she stole our money to pay for it, or to pay off a debt from it. He shook his head, a humorless laugh escaping his lips. Okay, now I know you've lost it. A gambling problem? My mother? The woman who organizes charity bake sales and volunteers at the library? That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. Is it? I pressed, my voice gaining strength. Think about it, Liam. The way she is about money. The way your dad looked when he asked about the credit card bill. The way she spends money on new things but seems to be in some kind of trouble. It all adds up. No, it doesn't add up, he said, his voice rising in anger. It adds up to you hating my mother and creating these insane fantasies to justify it. You're obsessed. You're turning our first month of marriage into a witch hunt against my family. This is not a witch hunt, I yelled back, jumping to my feet. This is about $5,000 of our money. Our future, money for a house for our family. And you refuse to even consider that the person who had the access and a potential motive might actually be guilty. My mother does not have a motive, he shouted. She is not a gambling addict. You need to stop this, Ava. Right now. You are going to destroy this family with these accusations. She is destroying this family with her secrets, I countered, my voice cracking with emotion. And you are letting her do it. The fight was explosive, the worst one we had ever had. He accused me of being vindictive and paranoid. I accused him of being a coward, too afraid to face the truth about his own mother. He ended up sleeping on the couch. I lay in our bed alone again, crying tears of sheer frustration. I felt so isolated. I had uncovered this dark, ugly secret. And the one person who should have been my partner in navigating it was actively working against me. The next morning, Liam left for work before I woke up. A single terse note was on the kitchen counter. We'll talk tonight. I knew what that meant. It was an ultimatum. Drop it or risk our marriage. But I couldn't drop it. I was in too deep and I was too certain that I was right. His denial didn't change the facts. It just made me realize that I couldn't rely on him. If I was going to expose this, I needed undeniable proof. Something he couldn't ignore. Something no one could ignore. My resolve hardened. This was no longer just about getting our money back. It was about saving my husband from the toxic family dynamic that was blinding him. I had to pull him out, even if it meant tearing everything down first. I knew what I had to do. I needed to get back onto Brenda's computer. The first time, I had only confirmed that she had our password. This time, I needed to find her secrets. I needed to look at her bank statements, her emails, her browser history. It felt like a massive violation of privacy, but she had violated ours in the most profound way. She had stolen from us and turned my husband against me. The rules of polite engagement were over. My excuse this time had to be even better. I couldn't use the broken printer story again. I thought about it for a full day before a plan began to form. Brenda was notoriously bad with technology. She was always calling Liam to help her with some minor computer issue. I decided to create a problem that only I could solve. I knew she was the administrator for her local book club's email newsletter. It was a source of great pride for her. I used a temporary email service to send her an email with a link, disguised as an update from the newsletter platform she used. The subject line read, "Action required, update your account settings." I knew her well enough to know she would click on it without a second thought. The link led to a harmless but confusing fake error page that I had designed. It was designed to make her think her account was locked. Less than an hour after I sent the email, my phone rang. It was Brenda, her voice frantic. "Ava, thank goodness you answered. Something is wrong with the computer. I can't get into the book club newsletter account, and I have to send the monthly update out by tomorrow. It keeps giving me some strange error message." I feigned concern. "Oh no, that sounds stressful. What does the error say?" She tried to describe the page I had created, getting more and more flustered. "I don't know, it's all technical nonsense. Liam is stuck in meetings all day and can't help. I don't know what to do." "Don't worry, Brenda," I said, my voice calm and reassuring. "I'm actually pretty good with this stuff. I had to deal with a similar issue at my old job. I can come over and take a look if you want." "Oh, would you?" she said, relief flooding her voice. "You would be an absolute angel." "I'll be there in 20 minutes, I said, hanging up the phone. My hands were shaking, but a cold determination had settled over me. This was my chance. When I arrived, she led me straight to the office. The fake error page was still on the screen. "See?" she said, pointing at it helplessly. "Okay, let me see what I can do," I said, sitting down at the desk. I clicked around for a minute, pretending to diagnose the problem. "It looks like your browser might have a corrupted file. I'm going to have to run a few scans and clear out some temporary files. It might take a little while. Maybe you could go put your feet up, and I'll call you when I'm done." "Whatever you think is best, dear," she said, happy to be relieved of the responsibility. "You're a lifesaver." She left the room, closing the door behind her. I was alone. I took a deep breath and got to work. First, I went straight to her browser history. I typed casino into the search bar. The results filled the screen. Dozens of visits to sites like Golden Palace Casino, Lucky Spin Slots, and Premier Poker Online. The visits were frequent, often late at night. Some searches were more desperate. How to win at online blackjack. Quick loans for bad credit. How to hide debt from husband. My heart pounded in my chest. This was it. The dark underbelly of her perfect suburban life. Next, I checked her email. I searched for the names of the casinos. I found them. Dozens of emails. Account registration confirmations, deposit receipts, special promotions. And then the ones that made my stomach churn. Your account is overdrawn. Payment reminder. Action required. And final notice before account suspension. She wasn't just playing. She was losing. Badly. The final piece of the puzzle had to be her bank account. I knew from the password manager that the login information would be saved. I navigated to her bank's website. Her credentials were pre-filled. I clicked login. I was in. I clicked on her checking account statement. It was a bloodbath. There were hundreds of small and large transfers to the casino payment processors, the same ones I had seen on our statement. There were also numerous overdraft fees and returned payment charges. She was shuffling money between a credit card and her checking account, trying to stay afloat, but she was sinking fast. Then I saw it. A deposit made just 2 days ago, for exactly $5,000. The description was, "Transfer from joint savings." It was our money. She hadn't even bothered to hide it. She had just dumped it directly into her own account and then immediately started transferring it out again in smaller increments to the gambling sites. I felt a wave of nausea. The sheer audacity of it was breathtaking. She had stolen our dream, our down payment, and pissed it away on virtual slot machines. I took out my phone and started taking pictures. Pictures of the browser history. Pictures of the emails from the casinos. Pictures of her bank statement showing the transfer from our account and the subsequent payments to the gambling sites. I documented everything, creating a folder of damning evidence. As I was about to log out, I saw an email thread with a subject line that caught my eye. The plan. It was between her and Mark, Chloe's husband. My hands trembled as I clicked on it. The email chain was short but devastating. Brenda had written, "Mark, I need you to back me up on this. I need a significant loan from Robert, and the baby is the only way he'll give it to me without asking too many questions. I'll tell him it's to help you and Chloe get a down payment on a house for the baby. He's a sucker for his grandchildren. You'll give the money to me, and I'll pay you back once I get my big win. Mark's reply was terse. Brenda, this is insane. We are not lying to Robert. We don't need the money, and I am not getting involved in your schemes. Brenda's final reply was chilling. You will do this. If you don't, I will tell Chloe about that little trip to Vegas you took last year before you were married. I'm sure she would be very interested to hear what happened there. Don't test me, Mark. We are all going to present a united front at the baby shower next week. Robert will be there. And we will put the plan into action. Blackmail. She was blackmailing her own son-in-law, using her unborn grandchild as a pawn in a desperate scheme to fund her addiction. The baby shower. That was her next move. That was where she was going to corner Robert and manipulate him into giving her more money. I felt sick to my stomach. This was so much worse than I could have ever imagined. It wasn't just about us anymore. She was hurting everyone. She was threatening to blow up her daughter's marriage to cover her tracks. I quickly fixed her computer issue by simply clearing the browser's cache, which logged her out of her newsletter account. I then called her back into the room and showed her how to log back in. She was overjoyed, praising my technical skills. I don't know what I would do without you, Ava, she said, beaming. Happy to help, I said, my voice dangerously calm. Anything for family. I drove home in a daze, the evidence burning a hole in my phone. I had everything I needed. More than enough. The question now was what to do with it. My initial plan had been to show Liam, to force him to see the truth. But now, seeing the scope of her manipulation and the blackmail against Mark, I realized a private confrontation wasn't enough. She was planning to execute her next move at the baby shower. It was the perfect stage. She had hijacked my wedding to make an announcement. It was only fitting that I use her next family event to make one of my own. She wanted a performance. I would give her one she would never forget. The breakthrough felt less like a victory and more like a burden. I was now the keeper of a secret that could shatter the family. For a few days, I did nothing. I watched Liam, who was still giving me the cold shoulder, waiting for an apology that I would never give. The distance between us was a physical ache in my chest. He thought I was the problem, the one creating drama. He had no idea I was holding the evidence that could exonerate me and expose the real source of the chaos. I decided I needed an ally. I couldn't do this alone. Liam was a lost cause for now, blinded by loyalty. Chloe was a victim in this, but she was fragile, and I didn't want to put her in the middle of it before the time was right. That left Mark. He was being blackmailed. He was trapped. He was my way in. I called him, my voice low and serious. Mark, we need to talk. It's about Brenda. I know what she's doing. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I don't know what you're talking about, he said, his voice strained. Don't lie to me, Mark, I said, my tone firm but not unkind. I saw the emails, the ones about the plan for the baby shower, the ones where she threatens to tell Chloe about Vegas. He let out a shaky breath. How did you... It doesn't matter how. I cut him off. What matters is that we can stop her. You don't have to go along with this. You don't have to let her blackmail you and use your child as a pawn. What choice do I have? He asked, his voice filled with despair. If I say no, she'll tell Chloe. It will destroy her. It will destroy us. And for what? So Brenda can get what she wants anyway? That's where you're wrong, I said. She doesn't have to win. I have proof, Mark. I have proof of everything. The gambling, the debts, the money she stole from me and Liam. I have her bank statements. I have her browser history. I have it all. He was quiet again, processing what I was saying. What are you going to do? He finally whispered. I'm going to expose her, I said simply. At the baby shower. She wants to use that party to execute her plan. I'm going to use it to execute mine. But I need your help. I need you to be ready to back me up. When I confront her, I need you to tell the truth. To Robert. To Chloe, to everyone. I, I don't know, he stammered. Chloe is pregnant. The stress of finding out her mother is a manipulative gambling addict who is blackmailing her husband will be bad. I agreed. But you know what will be worse? The stress of living a lie. The stress of letting Brenda control your lives, your finances, your marriage forever. This is your one chance to get out from under her thumb. For yourself, for Chloe, and for your baby. I let the words sink in. I could hear the turmoil in his breathing. He was scared, and I couldn't blame him. Brenda had him trapped. What do you need me to do? He asked, his voice barely audible. He had made his decision. Nothing yet, I said, a wave of relief washing over me. Just be ready. When the time comes at the party, I'll make the first move. All you have to do is tell the truth when you're asked. Can you do that? Yes, he said, his voice firmer now. Yes, I can do that. Good, I said. I'll see you on Sunday. Hanging up the phone, I felt the first glimmer of hope I had felt in weeks. I wasn't alone anymore. I had an ally. Mark's confirmation was the key. He was the witness who could corroborate the blackmail. With his testimony and my evidence, Brenda's web of lies would completely unravel. The full truth was now clear to me, in all its ugly detail. Brenda wasn't just a narcissist who needed attention. She was a desperate addict. Her public image as the perfect mother and community pillar was a carefully constructed facade to hide a deep and destructive secret. She used her family's love and loyalty as a resource to be exploited. She stole from one child, blackmailed another's husband, and planned to manipulate her own husband, all to feed her addiction. The announcement at our wedding wasn't just a petty act of jealousy. It was the first move in her larger game, establishing the unborn grandchild as a tool for future financial manipulation. I looked at the folder of photos on my phone. The evidence was undeniable. But it wasn't just a tool for revenge anymore. It felt like a weapon to be used in a rescue mission. I had to rescue Mark from blackmail. I had to rescue Robert from financial ruin. I had to rescue Chloe from a lifetime of her mother's manipulations. And most of all, I had to rescue Liam from the fog of denial that was keeping him tethered to a toxic and destructive woman. My plan for the confrontation at the baby shower began to take shape. I wasn't going to stand up and make a grand, dramatic speech like she had at our wedding. That was her style, not mine. My approach would be quieter, more deliberate, and far more devastating. I would use a gift. A gift that would force her hand and start the conversation I needed to have. I spent the next 2 days preparing, getting everything in order. I felt a strange sense of calm. The anger and hurt were still there, but they had been forged into a sharp, focused resolve. Brenda had started this at a family celebration. I was going to end it at one. The baby shower was held in Chloe and Mark's backyard. It was a beautiful day, the sun shining brightly. The yard was decorated with pink and blue balloons, and a long table was laden with food and gifts. It was the picture of a happy family celebration. The irony was suffocating. I arrived with Liam, who was still tense and distant. He had barely spoken to me all week. He thought I had come to make a grudging apology. He had no idea I had come to burn it all down. I smiled and greeted everyone, playing the part of the happy sister-in-law. I chatted with aunts and cousins. I congratulated Chloe, who looked radiant but tired. I saw Mark across the yard. He caught my eye and gave me a subtle, nervous nod. He was ready. I found Brenda holding court near the gift table, laughing and accepting compliments on how wonderful the party was, a party she had, of course, organized. "Ava, dear," she said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "I'm so glad you came. I was worried you were still upset about the little announcement at the wedding." "Not at all, Brenda," I said, my own smile just as fake. "It was a day full of surprises, and I have one for you today, too." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "For me? But it's Chloe's day." "Oh, this is a family gift," I said smoothly. "I think everyone will appreciate it." I mingled for another hour, letting the tension build inside me. I watched as Robert arrived. He looked happy, doting on Chloe, completely unaware of the scheme his wife had cooked up. I felt a pang of sympathy for him. He was about to have a very bad day. Finally, the time came for Chloe to open her gifts. She sat in a large, comfortable chair, surrounded by piles of brightly wrapped presents. Everyone gathered around. After she had opened a dozen gifts, tiny clothes, a baby monitor, a mountain of diapers, I knew it was my moment. "We have one more gift," I said, my voice cutting through the happy chatter. I stood up and walked to the table, picking up a small, elegantly wrapped box. "This one isn't from the registry. It's a bit more personal." I walked over and handed the box not to Chloe, but to Brenda. "Actually, this is for you, Brenda," I said. "A grandmother gift." A confused murmur went through the crowd. Brenda looked flustered. "For me? Ava, you shouldn't have." "Oh, I insist," I said, my voice hardening slightly. "Please open it." She fumbled with the ribbon, her hands shaking. Liam was staring at me, his eyes wide with a mixture of confusion and dawning horror. He knew something was wrong. "This is it, I think. This is the moment everything changes." Brenda finally got the box open. She lifted the lid and looked inside. Her face, which had been a mask of confused pleasantry, instantly turned ashen. She went completely pale. Inside the box was not a piece of jewelry or a sentimental trinket. It was a stack of professionally printed payment receipts. Receipts from Golden Palace Casino, Lucky Spin Slots, and Premier Poker Online. On the very top was a copy of the $5,000 bank transfer from our wedding account. She slammed the box shut. "What is this?" she hissed, her voice a low, venomous whisper. "I think you know what it is," I said, my voice clear and steady, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. "It's a record of your spending. Specifically, a record of how you spent the $5,000 you stole from our house fund." Gasps rippled through the family. Liam took a step toward me. "Ava, what are you doing?" he said, his voice pleading. I ignored him. I kept my eyes locked on Brenda. "I believe the term for it is a gambling addiction," I continued, my voice devoid of emotion. "You've been losing for a long time, haven't you, Brenda? Losing so much that you had to steal from your own son. Losing so much that you had to resort to blackmail." "That's a lie," she shrieked, finding her voice. "She's a liar. She's been trying to turn you all against me since the wedding." "Is it a lie, Mark?" I asked, turning my gaze to him. The entire party was now silent, all eyes on Chloe's husband. He looked terrified, but when he looked at his pregnant wife, his expression hardened. "No," Mark said, his voice shaking but clear. "It's not a lie. Brenda, she told me she would tell Chloe a secret about my past if I didn't help her get money from Robert. She wanted me to lie, to say Chloe and I needed it for a house, so she could take it to pay her debts." Chloe let out a small, wounded cry. She stared at her mother, her eyes filling with tears. "Mom, is that true?" Robert, who had been frozen in shock, finally moved. He walked over to Brenda and took the box from her trembling hands. He opened it and looked at the receipts. His face crumpled in on itself, a look of profound betrayal and sorrow washing over him. "Brenda?" he said, his voice a hoarse whisper. "What have you done?" Brenda looked around, her eyes wild, searching for an ally, a way out. But there was none. She was surrounded by the faces of the family she had manipulated and lied to. My evidence, combined with Mark's confession, had completely cornered her. She had no more cards to play. I needed it," she stammered, tears starting to stream down her face. But they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of self-pity. "I was going to win it back. I was going to pay it all back." "You weren't going to win it back," I said, my voice cold as ice. "You were going to keep losing. You were going to keep stealing and lying and blackmailing anyone you could to feed this sickness. You hijacked my wedding, you stole our future, and you were about to destroy your daughter's marriage. All for what? A slot machine? Liam was staring at his mother, his face a mask of disbelief and devastation. The fantasy he had held of his perfect mother was shattering before his very eyes. He finally looked at me, and in his eyes, I saw not anger, but a dawning, horrified understanding. I had been right. About everything. The aftermath of the baby shower was catastrophic, exactly as I had known it would be. The party dissolved in a flurry of hushed whispers and awkward departures. Chloe was inconsolable, and Mark immediately took her inside, away from the wreckage in the backyard. Robert stood silently by the gift table, staring at the receipts in the box, his shoulders slumped in defeat. Brenda was sobbing, a pathetic, broken figure surrounded by the debris of her own making. Liam finally came over to me, his face pale and drawn. "I'm so sorry," he whispered, his voice cracking. "Ava, I am so sorry. I didn't believe you. I defended her." "I know," I said, my anger finally softening into a deep, weary sadness. "I know you did. I never thought—" He trailed off, shaking his head. "I never imagined she was capable of this. Stealing from us, blackmailing Mark. It's monstrous." "She needs help, Liam," I said. "Serious help. But that's not our responsibility. Our responsibility is to protect ourselves, to protect our family." He nodded, wiping a tear from his eye. "You're right. I see that now. I'm on your team, 100%. Whatever we need to do, we'll do it together." It was what I had been waiting to hear for weeks. It was a relief, but it was a relief tinged with the bitterness of what it had taken to get here. I had to tear his world apart to make him see the truth. In the days that followed, the full extent of Brenda's deception came to light. Robert, no longer in denial, went through all of their finances. The reality was staggering. Brenda had maxed out over a dozen credit cards. She had taken out a secret second mortgage on their house. She had drained her own retirement account. The total debt was well into the six figures. She had been living a complete financial lie for years. Robert made the difficult decision to stage an intervention. He, along with Chloe and Liam, confronted Brenda. I was not present. It was their family, their mess to sort out. They gave her an ultimatum. Enter a residential treatment program for her gambling addiction, or they would cut off all contact and financial support. Faced with total ruin and isolation, she agreed. She left for a treatment center 2 states away a week later. My first conversation about the fallout was with Robert. He called me a few days after the party. His voice was heavy with shame. "Ava," he said, "I don't know what to say. I am so sorry for what Brenda did to you and Liam. And I'm sorry I didn't see it. I enabled her for years, making excuses for her behavior, covering her small debts. I never dreamed it was this bad." "It's not your fault, Robert," I said gently. "She's a master manipulator." "She is," he agreed. "But I should have known. I want to pay you back the $5,000. It's the least I can do. I'll have to sell the house to deal with the rest of this mess, but you two will be made whole. I promise." "Thank you, Robert," I said. "We appreciate that." Our future was no longer stolen. We had it back. My next conversation was with Chloe. She called me a week after her mother had left for treatment. She was quiet and subdued. "I just wanted to thank you," she said, her voice soft. "I know how hard that must have been for you. What you did at the shower, it was brutal, but it was necessary. You saved Mark. You saved us." "I'm so sorry you had to find out that way," I told her. "I'm not," she said, a surprising firmness in her voice. I needed to see it for what it was. I've spent my whole life making excuses for her, walking on eggshells around her moods. I'm sad, and I'm angry, but I'm also relieved. The secret is out. We don't have to live under it anymore." We talked for a long time, and for the first time, I felt like I had a real sister. The most important conversations, of course, were with Liam. We spent hours talking, unpacking years of his mother's subtle and not so subtle manipulations. He was finally seeing the patterns he had been blind to his whole life, the way she pitted him and Chloe against each other, the way she used guilt as a weapon, the way every family event had to revolve around her. "I feel like I'm waking up from a long dream," he told me one night as we sat on the couch, the space between us finally gone. "And I'm so ashamed that I let her treat you that way. At our wedding and after, I should have protected you. I should have been your husband." "We protect each other now," I said, taking his hand. "We're a team. No one gets between us again." We set firm boundaries. Brenda would not be welcome in our home until she had completed her program and made significant, lasting changes. All communication would go through Robert. We would not give her any money, under any circumstances. We were building a firewall around our marriage, protecting it from the toxicity that had nearly destroyed it. A month later, the $5,000 appeared in our savings account, just as Robert had promised. Looking at the balance, the full $30,000, I didn't feel the triumphant joy I had expected. I just felt a quiet sense of peace. The money was a symbol. It was our down payment, our future, reclaimed. But the real victory wasn't the money. It was the truth. It was the freedom from Brenda's control. It was the new, unshakable foundation of trust I now shared with my husband. Brenda had tried to make herself the center of our world at our wedding. She wanted to be the sun around which we all orbited. But her plan had backfired spectacularly. Her desperate grab for attention had led to her downfall. Now she was gone. Her world had collapsed, while ours was just beginning. She had wanted to make an important announcement. In the end, the most important announcement was the one I made. The truth. And the truth had set us all free. She had learned, finally, what it feels like to lose everything.